Hello and welcome once again to Mini Bites. We are continuing our series, Easter in Esther. So please turn in your Bibles to Esther chapter 4. We are on week 2, part 2. And as you're turning to Esther chapter 4, I wanted to quickly review Esther chapter 3 so that we're up to date. If you remember, Mordecai, which was Esther's cousin and also the one who raised Esther because Esther was an orphan. Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. That's his position. He was sort of like a king's official or almost like a king's guard. And he was sitting there, and Haman was raised up to a high position, and everyone was told to bow down to him, and Mordecai would not bow down to him, and this infuriated Haman. And Haman found out that he was a Jew, and instead of just ordering that Mordecai would be killed, he wanted to really make Mordecai suffer. So he went to the king and tried to make that, told him that there was this people, this group that would not follow the king's edicts and the king's laws. And so the king said, well, sure, do whatever you want with them. And so an order was made that all of these so-called people that wouldn't follow the king's laws would be destroyed. It's not said, but it would appear that the king didn't understand how large this group of people were, and so a lot was cast called a pur, and it was shown that on the 12th month that these people, the Jews, would be destroyed. And so this was the first month. So 11 months later, these people, the Jews, would be destroyed or killed. And so this death sentence was sent out to all of the land, that all of the Jews who were in the area would be killed. And so here's this death sentence that the Jews in the area would have 11 months to live. And so now this is where we pick up the story in chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. So this is something that they did then. They would tear their clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes. They would sprinkle ashes on their head and would sit with sackcloth. This was a way to show that they were suffering greatly. It was a sign of suffering and suffrage. But verse 2, but he went out as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. Because basically when you went into the king's realm, there was only joy, there was only celebration. The king would not allow any suffering in his village, if you will. Verse 3, in every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. What's really interesting, what we need to understand about this, is Mordecai is in this position. If you remember from the very beginning of Esther, he told her from a child to keep it secret that they were Jewish, and particularly that she was Jewish, but that they were Jewish. And so now he's at this point where he's wailing very publicly. He's putting on sackcloth and ashes and loudly wailing bitterly in the city courts, going up to the king's gate, where he's positioned in this position that he's in that we're completely not clear of, but it seems to be an official standing that he's in. And so he's not keeping it secret any longer that he is a Jew. And so he's making it known that at the very least, he's not ashamed or afraid to say that he's standing with the Jews or that he himself is a Jew. And so he's standing with them, and he doesn't care that anybody knows that he himself is a Jew as well. Verse 5, then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews, which we went over in chapter 3. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for the annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther to explain it to her. And he told him to urge her, Esther, to urge her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, so now go back to Mordecai, Hathach, and tell him what I'm telling you. Verse 11, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. The only exception to this is for the king to extend the golden scepter to him and spare his life. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. So this is the queen herself, Queen Esther, and it's been 30 days since she's seen her husband, the king, King Xerxes. So it shows that there's not this great intimacy in their marriage, or certainly maybe that the king has all of these concubines and maybe he's been with them. But basically what she's saying is, I haven't seen the king myself in 30 days. And so this would put on me a great personal danger on my own life, that if I were to go to him, the law says that he could put me to death. If he was in a nasty mood, a bad mood, he could just put me to death because he would have to summon me. And if he doesn't want to see me, he could just put me to death. Verse 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. So in other words, what he's saying is, I understand that you're saying you're fearing for your life, but what I'm saying to you is you have an opportunity to save not only my life, Mordecai speaking, not only my life, but all of your people's life. You're concerned about your life, which is understandable, but you have the opportunity to save all of the Jews' life. So let's put ourselves in her position. It would be like going into a burning building and you have the opportunity to do one thing that has the potential to maybe save other people in the burning building, but you don't know for sure. But the potential is you yourself could die, and there's only a potential you could save everybody in there, but there's also a potential that you yourself could die. And so these are the things that she's weighing in her mind. And it's real. She's a human being with human emotions and fear. And so these are the things that she's weighing. These are real human emotions. So verse 14, Mordecai continues, for if you of all the Jews will escape, verse 14, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. So this is one of, if not the most famous scriptures from the book of Esther. And so first of all, what Mordecai is saying is that his trust is in God, even though God is not mentioned. We've already talked about this. God's not by name isn't mentioned in the Hebrew or English translation of the book of Esther. He is, in fact, saying, my trust is in God. He's going to rescue the Jewish people. My trust isn't in an individual. My trust isn't in you. So he's going to deliver us. However, what if he has put you, an orphan, raised you up and put you in this impossible position, this unlikely position for such a time as this? This just crazy, unlikely storybook position for this very reason. What if God has placed you in this exact timing and place, this providential, godly place to do this very thing, to save your people? What if God has you here? Consider that, is what Mordecai is saying. And so, verse 15, then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. So she's saying, go and have all of our people, all of the Jews, fast and pray. Go and do this, because special spiritual battles, what I'm about to do is put my life on the line. And already our lives, our collective lives as a people, we have, the clock is ticking. If God doesn't intervene, we will all perish. We will all be annihilated if God doesn't step in. So let us all, for 3 days and 3 nights, let's not eat or drink. Let's just go before him and beg him to intervene. And so that's what she tells them to do. And she says that all of my maidservants and myself, that's what we'll do. And the interesting thing about this too is it is said that in the timing of this, that this is during the Jewish Passover. And so this is another way that this links to what we're talking about as far as Easter in Esther. And also it's interesting that for the Jewish Passover, you're not supposed to fast. This is when you're supposed to feast. You're supposed to celebrate what God did by delivering the Jews. But here they're praying and fasting that he would yet again deliver the Jews. And so this is just, again, this providential timing of God for Esther to be in such a time as this. So I want to read once again, verse 14, and then make a few more comments. Verse 14 again. This is again Mordecai trying to convince and plead with Esther. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. He's convinced. He's not saying maybe it will. He's convinced it will. However, he's also convinced you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to, I believe, do this. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Who's your father's family? Me, Mordecai. I'm your father's family. We will perish. And eventually you will too. And who knows but that you have come to royal position. You are the queen for such a time as this. This exact period of time where this royal decree has come out that the Jewish people would be annihilated, for such a time as this, that you would stem the tide. And so I just want to encourage you who are listening, watching, and encourage myself in the Lord as well, that we shouldn't wish that you shouldn't wish that you were someone else, that I shouldn't wish that I was someone else, that God created us to be exactly who we are, that you shouldn't wish that you're doing something else. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't grow or we shouldn't advance ourselves, and that we shouldn't wish that we were somewhere else, that we shouldn't continually just ponder and waste where we are and who we are and what we're doing. That God has placed us, and that we should serve God exactly where we are, doing what we're doing, exactly how we are. That we realize that God has created us with our gifts and our talents and our calling, and he's placed us at the exact time in history and the exact moment and city and culture and all of these kind of things for such a time as this. And we need to just be faithful until he calls us to do something else, somewhere else, if he ever does. And if not, to just be faithful until we hear his voice to tell us to do something else. And if he doesn't, then we need to be excited about what we're doing. And if all of us were to do that, we could truly change every environment. So be encouraged, and let's just be about it.